want your soul.
Have you ever heard a rumor about yourself that finally made its way back to you after years of circulation, and you realize that everybody bought into it and accepted it as 100% fact, even though you know it's a complete lie? Well, that's what happened to me, but way worse. People aren't saying that I did some lowlife shit or whatever. They're saying that I'm somebody else. And you know what? I'm not even sure that they're wrong anymore. Maybe I am somebody else. One morning a few weeks back, I was in the kitchen eating my Cheerios, screwing around on my phone, and there was this loud knock on the front door. "This is the police." I about shit my pants. I had a joint all rolled up in my backpack and on the stool right next to me. But I thought, there's no way they're coming in to get me for a joint. That would be crazy. "Open the door." My mom was up in the shower and my dad had already left for work. They kept on banging away at the door. I was scared as hell, but I didn't see that I had much choice. I got up and peeked through the side window there by the door, and sure enough, it was the fucking cops. 4 of them. 4 cops banging away at my door. I took a deep breath and opened it. "Calvin Dunlop," said one of the cops, a big massive dude that looked like he could crush me with one hand. The hand that was resting on his gun holster. "Step outside. You're okay now. Is Lois Brown inside?" Well, my mom's taking a shower, and I'm not even Kevin Dunlap. I'm Nick Brown. Lois is my mom. This threw the big guy for a loop. He turned and looked at his buddies. Then a lady cop spoke up. She looked nice. Not nice enough for me to trust her, but she looked nice. "I don't know what they did to you, Calvin, but you're safe now," she said. "Come with me. Your parents are waiting at the station." I started to get a little dizzy then. Well, my dad's at work and my mom's in the shower. So what's going on? Why are you guys here? I heard one of the guys in the back mutter. "Jesus," he said. "He thinks they're his parents." The big guy then cleared his throat. "Step outside, son. We need to get in there and apprehend Lois Brown." It was a struggle to think it all, but I thought back to all those cop shows and movies and whatnot. "All right, well, do you guys got a warrant?" One of the guys from the back then thrust his hand forward and there was a piece of paper in it. I didn't know what the hell it said, but I figured it was probably a warrant. I stepped outside. "She's upstairs. She's probably, naked, so be careful." The lady cop took me gently by the arm and walked me down the steps to one of the cop cars. I turned my head and saw the rest of them go into the house. "Am I in trouble?" "Well, you're safe now, Calvin," she said. I wondered who the hell Calvin was and why the hell they kept calling me that. Why the hell were they arresting my mom? "Get in," said the cop, holding the back door open. Then, just like in the movies, "Watch your head." What was I supposed to do? I got in and watched my head and we drove off. "You're not hurt or anything, are you?" she asked. "Nope, I'm just a little confused is all. When we get to the station, you can see your parents briefly, but then we have a lot of questions for you. I'm sorry, I'm sure it's very painful and scary, but we have to get your version of events." And she was right. This was pretty goddamn scary. We went to the station, and there standing by the front door were 2 people, a man and a woman, and they were crying. I'd never seen them before in my life. The lady cop then opened up my door and said, "It's all right, you can go over there to him." I stood up, but I didn't walk over to him. They then came running over to me, and both of them wrapped me in this wicked bear hug. "Calvin," they kept saying over and over again, sobbing. I guess they thought I was this Calvin character, but I wasn't. I was Nick. It was hard to breathe in that hug, but I finally choked out some words. Who are you guys?" They pulled away and looked at me in sort of shock. "It's Mom and Dad," the man said. He gave the cop a questioning look. He seems to be confused at the moment," the lady cop said. "That's why it's imperative that we get him inside and keep the investigation rolling. We'll have him back as soon as we can, Mr. and Mrs. Dunlop." She took my arm again and we started walking down the pathway to the front door. "Wait," cried the man. "Just 1 second." He dug in his back pocket and pulled out a wallet. He opened it up and held it out to me, stepping forward. "Look, Calvin, that's us." Behind a little plastic shield, there was a picture of this guy with a little kid sitting on his lap. The kid was maybe 5 years old. I don't know. Sure, he maybe looked a little like I did at that age, but the picture was small, and it didn't blow me away or anything. and the intense look in this stranger's face was starting to freak me out. "Oh yeah, cool. Okay. Well, I better get inside now, right, officer?" We were in that room for hours. It was hell. I cried, I puked, I pulled a clump of my hair out. They asked if my parents, Mr. and Mrs. Brown, they called them, ever hurt me. No, of course not. They asked if I remembered anything about the day of the kidnapping. I don't know what you guys are talking about. Kidnapping? There was no kidnapping. They asked if I tried to contact anybody for help. Well, help from what? What was I supposed to get help from? On and on and on it went. They were convinced that I was this kid, Calvin Dunlop, but I wasn't. "Look," I said at the end of my rope, "you guys fucked up big time, okay? I'm not this kid. Can I just go home now, or school, or anywhere but here?" "Do you want to see your parents for a minute?" asked the detective, some dude with a ridiculous mustache. "Yeah," I said, feeling relief for the first time that day. "Wait, no. I want to see Mom and Dad, my real Mom and Dad, not those two fucking weirdos that hugged me before, okay? I don't want to see them again." Mustache then sighed. "Those are your real parents, Calvin." He turned to the mirror. I knew again from the cop shows that it was a trick mirror. "Jerry, bring my laptop in here, okay?" A few minutes later, this Jerry guy came in with the laptop and set it in front of Mustache. Mustache screwed around for a bit and then flipped the computer around so I could see it. "Take a look at that," he said. "Scroll through those pictures." There were hundreds of them. Me as a baby, me as a toddler, me as a little kid, and so on. I recognized some of the pictures. My parents had shown them to me at various times. Some of them were even printed out and hanging on our walls, but others, there were a lot of them where I was with those people who had hugged me, the people claiming to be Calvin's parents, the people claiming that I was Calvin. And that's when I threw up. I'll tell you what they told me. 10 years ago, when I was 5 years old, Lois and Andrew Brown kidnapped me. Nobody knows why or how. They moved us all from Florida to a little town in Michigan. They had birth certificates and all that shit, a social security card. So they moved us to Michigan, enrolled me in school, got jobs, all that. And meanwhile, my real parents were going out of their minds. They were calling the FBI, stapling posters to telephone poles. Apparently, I was even on a milk carton at one point. They'd just woken up one morning and I was gone. The thing is, I don't remember it that way. I hardly remember anything from when I was that age, but I definitely don't remember Mr. and Mrs. Dunlop. I remember my parents, Lois and Andrew Brown. Vague globs of memory, sure, but I do remember them. I remember we lived in Florida and then we moved to Michigan. The cops can't explain any of that. They just say I must have been brainwashed. Now, they didn't use that word, but it's what they meant. But I don't think you can just go in and change somebody's memories. And to me, it's more than memories. It's a feeling. I'm living with them now, Mr. and Mrs. Dunlop, back in Florida. I beg them, somebody, anybody, to let me stay in Michigan, where my friends are. Hell, I'm almost done with high school, and now I had to haul off and start over again? I wasn't going to do that. I haven't seen the Browns, the people that I still feel are my real parents, since that morning that this all started. But like I say, it's a feeling more than anything else. Something is off with the Dunlops. Most of the time, they don't do shit. They just sit there, staring at me, not saying anything. They make me sit at the dinner table and eat dinner with them, but they don't say anything. They just chew in silence. Then one of them will randomly come out and say something over the top, like, "How was your day today, son?" Just like that, way over enthusiastic, you know what I mean? And I'll say something like, "Well, it was terrible. I'm totally fucking scared, and I don't know what's going on here." And then they'll say, "Isn't that something?" and go back to eating in silence. I'm not sure what to make of it. Maybe they got screwed up by this whole thing, but it doesn't just feel right. Lois and Andrew, they could be assholes, but they felt like my parents. Now they're locked up somewhere. I don't even know where. Another thing that's really messing with my head is that there's no media coverage of this. Not in Michigan, not in Florida, not anywhere. I mean, I'm not trying to come off as an important guy here, but you'd think you'd hear something about this, right? It's a pretty crazy story. I mean, you'd think that there would be an internet article or something about my name. But no, there's nothing. I asked the Dunlops about this, and they said they went through a media circus when I went missing, and didn't want to go through one again, so that's why there's no news about it. So I guess maybe it's not weird after all. Maybe I've just seen too many movies where the story always gets out to the press, but it sure seems like I should have seen something. right? I mean, a Wikipedia page, maybe? Like, what about my friends back in Michigan? Wouldn't they be talking about this? Speaking of my friends, I haven't been able to talk to them since this horror show kicked into gear. They all unfriended me and they're not answering texts. Corey's the only one I've ever heard back from. After sending him like 1,000 texts, he wrote back, "I'm not supposed to talk to you, Calvin, and after what you did, I don't want to talk to you ever." After what I did? What is he talking about? I sent another million texts to Corey after that. What did you hear? I don't think you heard the real story. Come on, man, tell me who told you what. You know what I mean? That's where I'm at. I'm freaked the hell out. I don't know what's real. I don't know what I want to be real, as if I had a choice. I'm not sure what I can do. I'm not even sure who I am, and that's when I decided to start with a DNA test. The problem was that I didn't have my license yet, let alone a car. I didn't even have a bike, so getting around was a problem, but not the worst one. The worst one was that I didn't have a single penny to my name, to either of my names. I was pretty much at the mercy of my parents, Cheryl and Abel Dunlop, at least until I figured out how to get started on some of the more complicated stuff. I woke up this morning, and I decided that I would confront them directly. Cheryl was in the kitchen cooking pancakes. When she saw me come in, she busted out this crazy smile. It looked like it would actually hurt her to smile that hard. "Good morning, my son," she almost shouted. "I made you pancakes." "Hey, Mom, I need to ask you something." "Anything." "Well, I'm honestly really weirded out by this whole thing. I mean, I don't remember you. Like at all." "And isn't that something?" she cried out between that creepy smile. "You don't remember your own mother?" "Yeah, it is something. And so I was thinking, it's nothing personal, but can we get a DNA test? To, just confirm that you're really my mom and Abel's my dad. It would make me feel a lot better." That smile then dropped in a second, and her face went pale. "Calvin," she said. Now this voice was pretty much a whisper and very firm. "You saw the photographs of us together. I am your mother, and you don't need a DNA test." My stomach pulled in on itself. This woman obviously wasn't my mother. If she was, she wouldn't have a problem with the DNA test. I wanted to run out the door, but where would I go? I took a deep breath, gripping the back of my chair. "Well, it's just that you said there was a lot of media coverage from when I was kidnapped. But I looked on Google and there's nothing. So, I mean, I'm sure you're my mom, but I just want to get the test and then I'll feel better." And then that smile was back on her face. "Oh, is that all? Well, a lot has changed in 10 years, son. We used to have 4 local newspapers back then. 2 of those papers folded for good, and the other 2 were bought out by a conglomerate. Those online archives must have got lost in the shuffle, that's all. I wouldn't spend another minute worrying about it," she said. "Oh, that's all. Don't worry about it," I thought. That's convenient. Apparently all these media papers are long gone, out of business. "Well, Mom, listen, that's why I want the DNA test. Just some proof that you really are my mom. I mean, it's pretty easy to Photoshop. I don't know if those pictures of us are real or not." "You didn't let me finish, son," said Cheryl, almost screaming now. "We have a full box of clippings and videotapes of the segments that aired on the news. And that's part of the evidence we presented to the police. You don't think they just let us take you without solid evidence that we're your parents, right?" "Oh, okay. Well, can I see it?" "Of course you can," said Cheryl. "But you need to eat first before your pancakes get cold." "Well, I'm not really hungry for breakfast right now. I'd rather look at the articles and stuff. Can I do that?" "Of course you can." And now she was shouting, "Abel, will you bring out the box?" "Of course I will," shouted Abel from the other room. A few endless minutes later, he walked in and dropped a box on the kitchen table. "Why are we dragging out this old stuff?" "He isn't sure we're his parents, honey," said Cheryl, letting out this weird fake laugh. "He doesn't remember that he was kidnapped." "Isn't that something?" said Abel. "He doesn't remember his own kidnapping." I looked at both of them wide-eyed and thought, what the fuck is going on? Then I opened the box and started digging through it. Sure enough, there I was, 5 years old, on the front page of a newspaper. 5-year-old boy missing, the headline said. Then below the picture, Calvin Dunlop disappeared from his home yesterday morning. There were about a dozen or so articles in there from different papers covering the kidnapping. There were also a few old video cassettes. "Can we watch these?" I said, holding one up. "Of course," said Abel. He took the videotape and we went into the living room, where he popped it into an old VHS combo player. He fast-forwarded through the weather and a few commercials, and then there I was again, this time on the TV screen. My mind was mush. Why didn't I remember any of this? I mean, that was me, right? It didn't make any sense. And then slowly a thought formed in my mind. Maybe it was just somebody who looked like me. A lot like me. Eerily like me. But then again, maybe it wasn't me after all. I looked across the room at Abel. "Okay," I said. "I believe that your son was kidnapped, and I'm really sorry about that. But I think I do need that DNA test." And now Abel's face went pale, like Cheryl's had before. "A DNA test? Well, I don't think that's necessary, Calvin. We're a little cash-strapped right now, too, I'm afraid. All of that travel and time off work. Why don't you just settle in a few days? Your memory will start coming back, I'm sure. I don't know what those monsters did to you, but I'm sure you'll remember. I'm sure of it." And then he started crying. I leaned back in my chair. It was a good show, but no way in hell this man was my dad. "Yeah, okay, that's fine, that sounds good," I said, doing the best to choke down the own fear in my voice. The crazy thing is that after that, I did start to remember stuff. But it's what I remembered that got real crazy. Not about the Dunlops, about the Browns, and my friend Corey. Abel drove me to school that morning. We were stone silent. I pulled out my phone and tried texting Corey for the billionth time. "Come on, dude, please respond. I don't think the Dunlops are my real parents, and I'm fucking freaked out." "What are you doing, son?" asked Abel as I typed away. "Oh, just texting an old friend," I said. "I miss him, you know. Really sucks." "Well, you'll meet new friends," he said. I didn't want to meet new friends. I wanted my old friends back. I started to get really angry. At the Dunlops, at the cops, and at everybody involved in this shit show. Even at Corey, my best friend. Why wouldn't he talk to me? Why was he so quick to cut me off? Why did he believe whatever it was that somebody was telling him? He was my best friend practically since the day we met, and that's when the memory came to me in a flash. We were in Michigan, at the gravel pit, where we had parties by a big bonfire. Only we weren't drinking beers and shooting the shit as teenagers. We were little kids. It was a long time ago. The fire was there climbing up into the dark night. Corey's face was covered with something. Blood? Was he hurt? No, he dipped into a bucket and pulled out fingers wet with a dark liquid. He smeared them across my forehead. I don't remember that. What the hell was that? I know that seems like a weird way to put it, but it's exactly how I felt. Like I was remembering something that I didn't remember. How's that for a mindfuck? The Browns were there in memory too, Lois and Andrew. They were wearing long dark robes and chanting. They were chanting something that I couldn't make out. What am I thinking about? I said out loud, the memory disappearing away as quickly as it had arrived. What's that, son? Said Abel, pulling into the school parking lot. Oh, it was nothing. Just a weird thought. My phone then buzzed. I looked in shock to see that it was a message from Corey, finally. But when I looked at it, I got creeped out in about 7 different ways, especially after that crazy flash of memory. It read, "They're not your real parents. Don't listen to their lies. Come home, Nick, to your real family." I had a miserable time at school, as you might imagine. Finally, the bell rang and Abel was out there waiting for me. I got in the car and he handed me a piece of paper. What's that? I asked. Oh, that's the DNA test, said Abel in a soft voice. He seemed like an actual human being now. We had it done in Michigan. We had to. It was the only way they would release you to us. We never wanted to. We vowed we never would. That I would be your real father no matter what. And son, this has been very hard for us. We haven't seen you in 10 years. We didn't know what to do, how to act. We were going to wait until things got to something resembling normalcy before we told you. But I can see that you need to know now, so here it is. I looked at the paper. It said that I was a genetic match to Cheryl Dunlop, but not Abel Dunlop. Neither of the Browns were a match either. Wait, I said, even more confused than ever. So you're not really my dad, but Cheryl's my mom? Abel took a deep breath and let it out. 16 years ago, I wasn't the only man in your mother's life. When she got pregnant with you, she told me everything, and we made the choice together. That we would have you, and I would be your father. Then he started sobbing. And I am, goddammit. No matter what that piece of paper says. No matter what those monsters did. I looked at the paper again. It could be fake. I do vaguely remember somebody sticking a Q-tip in my mouth when I was at the police station, but it's all such a blur of horror and confusion now. And I don't know why exactly, maybe I'm dumb, but I kind of started to believe him. I patted Abel on the shoulder. All right, it's okay, Dad. When we got home, I headed to my room to process everything. On the way there, I passed by the ancient TV they had in the living room, and I got hit with another memory. I was sitting in front of that TV as a little kid watching cartoons alone, but then I felt something behind me. 4 people were standing there, staring at me. One of them put his finger to his lips, shushing me, and I was too scared to even cry out. I knew his face. It was Corey's father. Andrew Brown was there too. He bent over and put something over my mouth, and then my memory ends. I stood frozen in front of the TV when my phone buzzed. It was another message from Corey. Don't believe their lies, it read. Help is coming. We're going to bring you back home. I'm starting to struggle with this, and I'm also starting to think that the Dunlops might be telling the truth. I think that Cheryl is my biological mother and Abel is my father by right. I think that the Browns might have kidnapped me and Corey's family was involved, possibly. After an afternoon and night locking myself in my room trying to work it out, that's what I'm starting to think. But beyond that, I don't have a clue. Corey's message and those memories of him and his father are seriously freaking me out. He's been my best friend for 10 years. Wouldn't he tell me? I'm thinking my next step might be to tell the Dunlops about the memories and the messages from him. I think that might be safe. At this point, I can't think of anything else to do than just start putting stuff out on the table. I went ahead and laid it all out for the Dunlops. I mean, between the articles about somebody getting kidnapped who looked exactly like me and my own memory of it, plus the DNA test, which was probably real, I figured their side of the story might be legit. And I felt I had to do something fast, given Corey's text about help coming. When I was done telling them about it all, I half expected them to say, well, isn't that something? And then cook me up some pancakes or whatever, but they didn't. As I told the story, their smiles kept dropping and dropping until they were gone completely. Your friend's father, said Abel, giving me this intense stare, the one who helped kidnap you. What's his name? Jack Calloway, I said. And what does Jack Calloway look like? Asked Cheryl, shooting me an eerie stare. I don't know. He's just a regular guy, tall, big beer belly, going bald. Does he have a scar on his face? Like this? Abel drew his finger across his face next to his eye, right where Corey's dad had a scar. Yeah, that would be it. You guys know him? Abel and Cheryl looked at each other with wide eyes. They looked scared. Then Cheryl nodded, and Abel pulled his phone out of his pocket. Are you calling the police? I asked, relieved that somebody was finally taking charge. Abel totally ignored me and dialed the number. My house, he said into the phone. They're coming. And then he hung up. That was, is that the police? Do you know a cop or something? How did they know what you were talking about? What's going on? Your phone, said Cheryl. It's not safe for you to have it. Give it to me. My brain started screaming at me that something was very wrong. Hand over my phone? Well, why do I need to do that? Why do you need my phone? Why can't I just keep it? Now's not the time to explain, son, said Abel. You're in great danger. We all are. Hand the phone to your mother now. I was a total mess by then. Just raw nerves and scared out of my mind. But I wasn't going to give up my phone. No, I'm not going to do that. I need my phone. Abel then stood up and took a step toward me. And I stood up and I took a step toward the door. He grabbed my shoulder hard and I felt it. It felt like he could crush me if he wanted to and that he just might want to. I started to feel sick and dizzy. Your phone, son, he said, holding out the hand that wasn't digging into me. There was nothing I could do. I pulled the phone out of my pocket, tears starting to well up, but as I was handing my phone over, I saw that I had missed a text from Corey. Good boy, said Abel, releasing his grip on my shoulder. You're a fucking asshole, I said, and you're not my dad. Abel flicked my phone open and read the message. They're close, he said to Cheryl. Get some tea ready. And then he turned to me. You need to go to your room and stay there. I understand that you're upset right now, and that's not because you talked back to your father. It's for your own safety. I wanted to make a run for it, out the front door, but what could I do after that? No wheels, no cash, no phone? And something told me that the Dunlops wouldn't let me just get away anyways. There was a gas station about a mile down the road, but there was no way I could make it, not without a car. I tried to think where they kept their keys to their cars. I had no idea, and now I was trapped. "Fuck you," I said, and then I headed up to my room, flopped on my bed, and started crying like a baby. It was the tea that Cheryl was making. I could smell it all the way down the hall and through my bedroom door. It had a weird, strong smell. As soon as I smelled that god-awful tea, I was hit with one hell of a memory. I was a little kid. It was before I had been kidnapped. There were a bunch of people in our house. I was supposed to be in my room, but I wasn't. I was peeking through the door of the study. That's where everybody was. They all had this patch sewn on their white shirts. I couldn't make out the symbol, but they all had it on. My father was there. I don't mean Abel Dunlop. I mean my real father. I don't know how I knew he was my dad, but I knew. I don't remember anything else about him, but I knew that my father was there sitting on the couch next to Cheryl. She was handing him a cup of tea. Abel was there too, and so was Corey's dad. About 8 other people. My father then took a sip of tea, and then he keeled over. I cried out, and everybody whipped their heads around and saw me peeking in, and then I was running. That's all I remembered. Back in my present nightmare, I heard people starting to come into the house. I was staring up at the ceiling, trying to shake off the shock of the memory. I couldn't quite put it together. My real father, they did something to him. Something that was in that tea, and Cheryl, my mother, I was now sure, made him drink it. And those patches. It seemed like some kind of secret society or cult or something crazy like that. My father had been a part of it, and my mother and Abel and Corey's dad as well. It was too much. Honestly, it was way too much. It was already too much even before that. And now it was really out of control. The window, I thought. Climb out the window and just run like hell. I just got out of bed and looked out the window. I could see the front door from there. 2 dudes were standing on either side of it with big guns resting against their shoulders. Cars were pulling into the driveway. As the people got closer, I recognized some of them, but not all of them. They all had that patch sewn on their shirts. One woman looked over and saw me. A huge, terrible smile spread out across her face, and she waved. She had been there, in my memory. I slammed the curtains closed and curled up in a ball on my bed. Finally, I got up and put my ear to the door, trying to hear what was going on. I was way too scared to actually open it. I couldn't hear much, just people talking, and I couldn't make out what they were saying. I went back to bed and just stayed there all night, trying to piece it together. The Browns, now in jail, kidnapped me with Corey's dad's help. They were part of that crew in Michigan that seemed to be a cult or something, wearing long robes and smearing me with shit and chanting. But before I was kidnapped, there was another weird crew. These guys maybe killed my real dad, and the Dunlops were obviously deep in it. Corey's dad was a part of that crew too. These guys wore patches with some kind of symbol sewn on a white shirt. Now, the robes were apparently coming down to try to get me from the patches. At least that was my best guess. Why were they fighting over me? And who were they really? I didn't know. I didn't have the foggiest idea. And I just wanted it to be over. And I felt that in my gut, it would be over soon somehow. And that didn't exactly make me feel much better either. People started leaving the house just as the sun was coming up. I watched them all go. Even the Dunlops left. But there were still a few cars in the driveway, and when I looked over, sure enough, there were still 2 people standing by the front door with rifles. Different people, like they'd changed shifts or whatever. I was totally exhausted, but also wired up, too. I finally got up the balls to creep into the Dunlop's bedroom and look for my phone. I couldn't find it. I thought about looking around some more to see what I could dig up, but I remembered that there was a computer in the study. And that's when I headed in there and found a dude snoring away on the couch. The first thing I did was find the local police website and send off an email. I haven't heard back yet though, so I don't even know if anybody got it, let alone if they'll believe it or if help's coming at all. But I did just hear a car pull in the driveway, and now I hear people talking outside. I need to get back into my room and hide. And that's exactly what I did. I locked the door, hopped in bed, and pulled the covers over my head. I heard footsteps outside in the hall getting closer, and then they were right outside my door, and somebody knocked. "Calvin Dunlop?" "This is the police. Are you in there? We got your email." Thank God. I got up and unlocked the door. As I was opening it, I wondered why there wasn't more commotion with the guards at the front door if the cops were here now. But it was too late. He shoved the door the rest of the way open and stepped in. "Isn't that something?" said the cop, with that same awful smile that all these guys had plastered on their faces. "Calvin Dunlop, in the flesh. Well, I'll be." That's it, I thought. I turned and was getting ready to just smash through the window and make a run for it. There were still armed guards out there by the door, but there was an armed and crazy cop in here with me now. At least out there was some open space and I'd have a shot. Not much of a shot, sure, but it was better than nothing. The cop then grabbed me by the arm, and then I wasn't going anywhere. "Please," I said, too exhausted to start crying. "Just tell me what this is about before you kill me." "We're protecting you, Calvin," said the cop, still smiling. The smile didn't fit with the big meaty hand gripping my arm, and I didn't feel protected from anything. "Protecting me from what?" I asked. "I am so honored that Mother and Father have selected me to enlighten you." He shoved me down onto the bed. "The bad people have brainwashed you, Calvin. You have forgotten your purpose. You have forgotten that in 17 days the world is going to burn. You have forgotten that you are the vessel that will carry us all to safety." When he said that last bit, he pointed up at the ceiling. The room then began to spin as I tried to form a thought. There was something about 17 days. "Who are the bad people and why do they want me?" I asked. I figured that was a good place to start. The cop then opened his mouth, but the sound of a gunshot from outside cut him off. And I just about pissed myself. Terror on top of fear on top of horror. A nice shit sandwich if there ever was one. "Isn't that something?" said the cop. "They're here. You're safe with me, Calvin." I obviously didn't feel very safe with him, especially not after he whipped out his gun. And then another gunshot. I tried to look out the window but couldn't see very well from the bed. Then the gunshots were really starting to pop, one after the other, like a war was going on out there. In between the loud bangs, I heard tires screeching and people shouting. God damn it. The fighting was getting closer to the house, and before long, I heard the front door banging open, and then there were people inside. The cop cocked his gun and pointed it at my bedroom door, ready to blast away whoever tried to get in. I got up quietly as I could and crept over to the window. This was my shot. But when I looked out, I saw that there were 4 people there, crouched down, right in front of my window, guarding it. They were all wearing dark robes. Fuck. I then heard people screaming. I heard people groaning in pain. Sometimes I would hear this really gross and horrifying splattering sound, like something wet was hitting something hard. I heard a ton of gunshots. Then the door to my room was flying open, and the cops started shooting at it. I dug down and covered my ears. A second later, a body thumped down right next to where I was crouched. It was the cop. He had a freaking arrow sticking up out of his forehead. His dead eyes were staring up at the ceiling and his smile was gone. My ears were ringing like hell, but I heard it. "Nick, Calvin, listen to me. You have to come with us right now." Then I saw an arrow fly from the doorway into the window, shattering it. I looked up and there was Corey's dad, Jack, standing there with a crossbow in his hand, dressed in one of those dark robes. What is happening?" I shouted. "Jump out the window. You're safe now if you hurry." "I'm not going nowhere until you tell me what this is about." "Look, these people, they're a cult. The Dunlops, your mother? I was a part of it too once. The Starlighters, they're called. Calvin, the day you turn 16, they're gonna kill you." And I would turn 16 in 17 days. Holy shit. "Who are you guys?" "We rescue people from cults and give them their lives back," said Jack. "I will explain everything later, but right now we have to go." Corey's dad never got a chance to explain anything more than that. I heard the gun go off, felt the splatter of blood, and then he was down, right on top of the cop. And I couldn't help it. I puked right on his dead body. Standing there in the doorframe was Abel Dunlop, holding a big gun. He walked slowly over to the window and let off 4 quick shots, killing the robes who were out there. "Isn't that something?" said Abel. "Old Thomas the Troublemaker. That's his real name, you know. Not Jack, it's Thomas. He lied to you, son." Abel then reached down a bloody hand to me. I slapped it away. "You killed my father," I said, "and now you're going to kill me." "Oh, no, not at all, son. I'm going to protect you. From them. If they get a hold of you, it's too terrible to even think about." No, in 17 days you're gonna kill me. Oh, that's lies, said Abel. In 17 days we're all gonna be free. We're gonna go to the stars. It's the ones left behind who will be in trouble. A second later, Abel's severed head was on the ground, his tongue sticking out of his mouth. And then a half a second after that, his body hit the ground too. I blinked hard and looked up. My father was standing there, my real father. The one from the memory I had where the Starlighters forced him to drink poison tea. He was holding a bloody samurai sword. Dad? Let's go, kiddo, he said. He reached out his hand and I took it. He yanked me to my feet. You need to jump out that window and you need to run. He pulled out a gun from behind his back. I'll cover you, but I think it's clear now. The gunfire had died down a lot. There's a Jeep backed in by the garage. If I don't make it, just get in. Find Corey and he'll tell you everything. Now, I don't know why exactly, because there was a lot of weird shit going on. But I 100% trusted this guy that I only had a single memory of. This guy coming to me in the middle of the craziest shit you can imagine. I got up and jumped out. The front yard was covered with dead bodies. Some of them weren't even quite dead. I ran by one guy who was stretching his arm out to me. He had a patch sewn to his shirt that used to be white, but now it was red. That patch had a bunch of stars on it. I'll see you in the stars, Calvin, he gasped at me as I ran past. It will really be something, he shouted. My dad and I made it out of there, in his Jeep. And I'm going to summarize what he told me because I kept losing focus and interrupting him to ask questions. Corey has filled in some of these details too, over the phone. When I was a kid, my parents were nerds. My dad came up with this idea to start the Starlighters Club, where they'd come up with these elaborate scenarios and act them out. Like they were the last defenders of the universe against some evil aliens that were going to come and torch the place or something. It was just for fun, like LARP, or some of the no-sleep weirdos. Corey's dad was part of the club. Then Abel Dunlop joined the gang, and things took an intense turn. He got a little too into it, and soon the whole group did, including my mother. She kept dropping character less and less, and then she stopped altogether. She really started believing this shit. Everybody did. Then Abel started talking about the Great Merge. That really just meant killing me when I turned 16. As soon as he heard that, my dad then went to the cops, but it turned out that a few of them had heard about the Starlighters and wanted to join too, so they weren't any help. My dad then called everybody together. He was still the captain. He was going to tell them all to cut it out and knock it off and go find another interest. But Abel knew that. He had Cheryl spike my dad's tea. Nothing lethal. In fact, the plan was to keep him alive long enough to kill him right alongside me. That would give the whole thing some extra juice, apparently. Corey's dad volunteered to keep my dad in his basement. On the drive over, my dad woke up and dug his fingernails into Jack's, or Thomas's, I guess, face. And that's where the scar came from. But Jack had the needle ready to go and knocked my dad out again. It took a whole year of living in his basement, but my dad finally convinced Corey's dad that the whole Starlighters thing was batshit insane. I mean, my dad started the thing, so he was good at explaining the mechanics of it. Corey's dad started researching cults online, even as he kept my dad in the basement because he wasn't sure at that point, and then came across a couple that had made it out alive from a particularly nasty cult. The Browns, they were calling themselves now. So Corey's dad got together with them, and they decided to start their own thing, called New Beginning. The idea was to rescue people from cults whenever that was possible, especially children, starting with me. They let my dad go but didn't tell him their plan. They figured that it was too iffy to release me to my dad at all. I mean, he did start the thing, so they kidnapped me on their own and brought me to Michigan. They had studied the brainwashing techniques that were used on them and were able to convince me that I was really the Browns' son. They declared a new beginning for me at a bonfire, with a bucket of home-brewed wine, wearing robes as a nod to the Eastern religions that helped them cope with their own transitions back to normal life. Corey's dad was also not really Corey's dad. He was a rescue case from a cult in Oregon. New Beginning grew fast across the country. At first it was people who had managed to escape cults themselves, and then it kept growing as they rescued more and more adults. Adults had a choice to join the group or just move on. Kids who were too young to fend for themselves and had no other safe options were adopted and brainwashed into a new family. Meanwhile, the Starlighters were growing too. and offshoots were forming. That's how they finally found me. Apparently, I'm pretty famous in the cult world. I guess there's a place on the dark web where they all get together, and my picture has been circulating for years. Somebody from my town in Michigan recognized me, and they alerted the Dunlops privately, and meanwhile had their kids spread all these rumors about me. That I had killed my real father and that I was sending my adopted parents to jail. That I was crazy and dangerous. And because they were masters of manipulating people, everybody at my school started to believe the rumors. Cody at first did too, but before he left for Florida, Corey's dad told Corey everything that I'm telling you now. Corey was supposed to keep totally quiet about it until I was safe, but he couldn't help but send a few texts letting me know that help was on the way. Meanwhile, my dad had been looking for me this whole time. He discovered that dark web group and followed it for years. When he saw that they had found me, he flew straight to Michigan. But by the time the dark web group was talking about it in their chat room, it was already over. I was back in Florida with the Dunlops. So he turned right around and headed back to the airport, and that's where he ran into Corey's dad. At first, my dad was ready to kill Corey's dad, right there in the airport. After all, the guy had kidnapped me without my dad's knowledge, so my dad kinda had a reason. But he decided that rescuing me was more important than vengeance, and he knew he couldn't do it alone. So they teamed up along with a network of new beginners, and organized an attack on the Starlighters. It's nuts, but that's what was going on the whole time. Like I said, it took me hours and hours of going over the same thing again and again before I could finally sort it out. But that's what happened. My dad and New Beginning got together and saved me from the Starlighters. As you can imagine, I'm pretty fucked up after all this. It's not really over. I don't know that it'll ever be over. My mother might still be out there. All of the offshoots of the Starlighters are still out there. How many? I don't know. But I know it goes deep, and we have to be careful about our next move. I'm on my way to see Corey right now. I can't say where. After that, we're going to try to get the Browns out of prison. But man, from what I've been hearing, you've got people at the federal level even involved in this shit. So I'm signing off now. Don't worry about me. I've got my dad and I'll be with my best friend pretty soon. And remember, if you ever get around any tea that smells really weird, well, be mindful and know that you've got a friend in me. Remember my story.